Hey, look who's here. It's Bill Word, you guys. Oh my gosh.
Hey, kids.
Say hi to my
Good
people.
morning, Melinda.
What's that?
I said good morning.
Good
Good morning where you're at?
Yes, it's still morning. I'm very close to where you're at. I'm just in Vegas.
Well, yes, that's not far.
So tell me about who is Bill Word in the world, on your Facebook profile. Who is Bill Word?
Well, that's a loaded question. Who am I? It's who I want people to think I am, and then there's the real Bill, right?
Exactly.
So, right now, I'm climbing the walls. What is it? 3.5 weeks now for me in this quarantine fun. So, who am I? That's a loaded question. Wow. You start off with the tough ones. Like, who are you, Bill?
Where'd you
Who
come
are you?
from? Where did a comedian like you come from?
It was a virgin birth.
Immaculate.
Oh, no, wait a minute. I'm talking about myself. Okay. Well, okay. Let me give you the story. I was born in Lowell, Massachusetts, and lost my Boston accent because I moved to California at age 4 months. So I know the correct use for R's. You know, I don't say con, potty, pock. I know I have the California accent. So my father was a Methodist minister,
What?
and so I'm a preacher's kid. So
Word.
Yes, Word. Yes, there you go. Yeah, my last name's Word, and so I only had a few choices in life. I could go in the ministry or become a comedian. So,
There's some
but my father.
sorry, but some ministers think they're so funny.
Yes, that would be my father. He thought it was so funny. He actually, his doctoral thesis at Boston University, he was getting he didn't get a PhD, he got a thud. He got a THD, Doctor of Theology at Boston University, and his doctoral thesis was humor in preaching. So,
Oh, no way.
yes, that was his doctoral thesis. So, and I was a middle child. So, as I always said, the women in my family talk a lot. And as growing up, I had like one line a night at the dinner table, and I had to make it good. So and being a middle child, my job was to, bring levity to the crazy situation. So that's kind of how comedy began. And, I seeing my father in front of people all the time. And, I kind of like attention myself, kind of, sort of, I'm sure no comedian could relate to that, right?
Do you know I'm a middle child?
You are too.
Yeah. So I totally get it. I was always trying to bring the levity.
Yes, I think it's called mascot in, the different positions in the family. That was my job. So I remember my brother, when I was in high school, broke his jaw, and or somebody broke his jaw, So, but that's another story. And being the fun brother I was, I'd eat hamburgers in front of him while you only could have liquid foods. So,
I love the way that boys and men interrelate so differently than how girls do. Girls are so sneaky and manipulative, and men are just straight up right in your face.
Yeah, and I'm 4 years younger than him, so he did a lot more to me than I did to him. So, so yeah, I was kind of the prankster. I remember my sister was complaining about my smelly socks, so I put my socks in her bed, so, things like that. And,
Yes.
I take the clothes off my other sister's Barbie dolls and throw them around, So, I'm sure I've been mentioned a few times in their therapy sessions,
Oh my God.
all the things I did. So, Yeah, and then so I came to Southern California. I lived basically Southern California all my life. We moved around a lot, so I've lived. I'm trying to think all the cities. It's probably easier to say what city I didn't live in. You know, just pretty much every Long Beach. I went to Long Beach Jordan High School. I went to Long Beach City College. I went to Long Beach State, where I got a degree in electrical engineering. And we all know how hilarious engineers are. And so yeah. That's and then I decided at some point I wanted to give up the high-paying software engineering job to make the big bucks and stand-up comedy. So yeah, I went. What did I say? Went from 6 figures to 4. People always go, "What do you miss about engineering?" Just the pay and the benefits. Is what I miss.
Well, if you went into comedy for all the money that you get from it, you must be really getting hit hard by this shutdown.
Yes, I can't even go back to pole dancing. It's sad. I always had that as a backup. Now I can't even do that.
Too many germs.
Yeah, exactly. The pole.
Yeah.
The virus stays on the pole a long time, so you just can't do that anymore.
So
yeah.
You go ahead. No, you go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I can't remember right now. That's how it goes.
You have all these things on your Facebook page, like I do, where you're putting all the things you've accomplished, or things like you have a production company, or I was trying to get a grip on what you were saying on your face. You have so many accomplishments. Talk to us about some of those.
Well, I need to be humble here. So, no. Well, where do I start? The list. Maybe you should just read them off. I don't know. I've been. When did I start? I started in 1991 doing stand-up. I was only 3 years old at the time. I was a child prodigy. It's been a long time. I probably hosted. Who knows? Produced. I lost track. Thousands of shows. I've hosted and produced, emceed. What was it? I'm trying to think dates here. I think it was around 2001 or something like that. I started producing shows at Martini Blues in Huntington Beach, and I think we had like a 5 or 6 year run on that. And it's at some point at our peak, they actually built a room for comedy. It was a jazz club, blues jazz club, and at its peak, I was producing 5 shows a week. I was teaching stand-up classes. We had all sorts of things going on. It was I would say it was probably a B-level comedy club at its peak, and a number of comics came through there. I always know when a comedian is successful. They stop returning my texts and phone calls. That's typically the sign of success in this business.
I've taught comics in Portland at Harvey's, and the young kids would come in and go like, "Where's my participation trophy? And when is my Netflix special coming out?" Do you get that? Sometimes.
I'm very honest with, I'm honest in a loving way. I don't, I try not to be too abusive, but we're comedians. We're used to abuse. So, I just try to tell them how it is. I said, this is easier than, not getting laughs. It's, pay attention to what I'm telling you. I'm telling you the truth. So I don't really sugarcoat things. And I've had a lot of success with my students because of that.
That's good.
I had classes where, when I started where, everything I say is funny, and then I do the showcase and no one's laughing. Like, oh, that's not good. So I just, I tell it like it is, and I mean, that's how you get better, right?
Yes.
Telling the truth.
So I have a question. When people tell a joke, this is me asking you, a trainer, a question.
Yes.
So when people get up on stage and they don't get a laugh from something that you've heard get a laugh, can you pinpoint why it is they're not getting a laugh that particular time?
Well, a lot of times they didn't deliver it correctly. That's why I always tell them to record themselves wherever they perform. And I do that too in me. Because typically, maybe 90% of the time I didn't deliver it correctly, or you leave something important out of the joke. And
yes.
So,
like the
a lot of
punchline?
it is energy and delivery. I mean, there's all sorts of factors involved. You could have a crappy sound system. I think the last thing you should do is blame the audience, because that becomes the slippery slope. I always believe, I've worked with the crappiest sound systems. I remember I did a show one time in the hallway of a hotel because they double booked the room. So I was just riffing off of people walking by. So, if you start going, they're too old, they're too young. When you start doing excuses, to me, I see it as a challenge, right? I could challenge to go into any situation.
Yes.
So I try to put that in their head, because when you start making excuses, then, you're going to give up pretty easily. That's what I tell them. Just come back for more.
What have you seen that a heckler has done that has actually helped a comic? Or have you seen you've probably seen people be resistant to a heckler and people that use it to their advantage. Can you speak to that?
Well, I always tell my students that every heckler is different, right? Every situation is different. I think the part of the problem I see with beginners is they go to the nuclear option too early, right? Someone coughs and they're doing dick jokes about them or something. Typically, what I find is you give them a leash, right? You let them. You see where it goes. Sometimes someone just says one thing the whole show. It doesn't mean you should stop the show and destroy them, right? So every heckler is different. So you got to take it the way it is, and the punishment has to fit the crime. Because someone could say something once, and that's the only thing. Do you need to blow them out? Then what happens is the crowd turns on you because you look like a real, meanie. So I always kind of let it, try to like, what did you say? Or a lot of the beginners, I always say probably the best option is ignore them, especially when you're a beginner. And then go from there. So a lot of times I will, if they're drunk, I'll let them be really drunk, and then I'll do an impression of them drunk, and go from there. Mimic them if they're not making any sense. I think it's best to stay away from canned lines. I know there's books that have like, oh, was this your first beer? Or is this thing on? I bet when you drink a water, the toilet seat hits you. See, I don't even know them that well, because I try to. You want to have it organic, have it happen organically, and whatever the situation is. If you're doing a canned response, the audience knows it's a canned response. And so I guess for me, a lot of it is give them a leash, find out what it is. Again, they could be just a couple things. And then, you want the audience to be on your side. You don't want them to, the worst thing to happen is have the audience be on the heckler's side, And so, I think that's the biggest thing is, listen, find out. It's the same way when I work with a crowd. I have to listen what's going on. I have to understand what's happening in the room. The heckler, especially if you're on the road, it could be someone that's everyone's best friend, right? So if you attack them, then, they start chasing you with torches. I think the best situation would be is if you could say something to the heckler and get them to laugh at that. That would be the best situation. It doesn't have to be, your enemies or anything like that. Again, everything is a little different. Everything it's like when I work crowds. I try to be organic. I try to be in the moment. I try to understand the situation. So I think probably the biggest thing is not to overreact and not attack too harshly. If you can get the audience on your side, then that's the best way. And again, some people just say one thing, and probably it's best just to ignore it, move on.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, if you're doing a big club, someone says something in the front row, the people in the back can't hear what they said. So a lot of times, if you ignore it, only the people sitting by them know what's going on. Especially if you're in the middle of a joke, and it could just screw up the timing. So what I find, like in the big clubs, I try to ignore it. Again, every situation is a little different, and I think that's what I love to do the most. I love being in the moment. I love just seeing what's going on, owning the situation. I remember one time I was doing a show, and it was some crappy place, let's face it. And and the band, after the comedians were setting up and making a lot of noise, and the comics were trying to do their set. And so I go up there and I go, when you guys start playing, I'm just going to come up here and start adjusting the mic stand. I'm just going to start looking at my notes. What happened to professionalism? And, the comics just loved it. Because I think the biggest thing I've learned in 30 years of comedy is there's no filter from my head to my mouth when I'm on stage.
That's really good for being in the moment.
Yeah, so I try to I think that works the best for me, and not always in relationships, but certainly doing stand-up, it helps, It's hard for me to kind of turn that off, because I'm used to just whatever is going on, calling it, and that seems to work the best for me.
I know the very first time I got up on stage, it was in Murrieta at Aces, maybe like 6 years ago when I first started. I got to be on a show, not because I was good, but because I filled the room with Temecula military wives. And there was a heckler in the back. But she was part of the group, but they didn't want her sitting with them, and I didn't know it. And I was horrible. I was no good. I shouldn't have been on the show. And I got heckled. And so I got done with the way I handled it. And I called my coach, Jerry Corley, and I said, what is the correct way to handle a heckler? I barely know a premise from a punchline at that point. And he said, when she said, when is the comedy going to begin? What were you thinking in that moment? And I'm like, hell if I know. I guess I was thinking, I expected a drunk heckler. I just didn't expect drunk bitch heckler. So he goes, that's what you should have said. Yeah. Whatever's in your head, whatever you're feeling, right? Because they're probably feeling the same way. So that's why a lot of it, and again, it's how I work the audience when I'm working crowds and stuff. And I think it's one of my strengths is, I love doing like between comics or commenting on what the comic just did. That's just being in the moment and saying what's going on. I want to come see you on stage. Maybe Nancy Ann can get me into something where both of you were on stage at the same time. Maybe Amy Ashton too. Well, in 2023, when we get out of the quarantine, you can come see me. This is the longest time I've been sent to my room ever. Yes, usually it's something I did that was bad. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think now we can go to our rooms with our devices. Back then we didn't. Back in the day, remote control. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, totally. But back in the day, go to our room as freaking 4 walls. There's nothing in there to have fun with.
Yeah, well, I'm getting a little cabin fever myself, and then here it's raining right now. It, I try to do socially distance walks, so but I don't know. I don't really feel like walking in the rain at the moment. We'll see if it clears up. That's kind of the only thing that's keeping me sane right now is walking.
Me
Because
too.
this is crazy time.
Yeah.
It's probably one that actually this is a good time for comedy.
It's a
for
good
couple
time for
reasons.
what?
Comedy.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
I think. Well, it's like when people are tense and fearful, it's when we need comedy the most. And then as a joke writer, this is the best time because everyone has the same frame of reference. Say you're doing a material on a TV show. Well, only the people that watch that TV show would understand what you're talking about. But we're all going through the same thing, so everyone has the same frame of reference. So it's a great time for joke telling because, everyone understands what you're talking about.
It's crazy. I had the whole wrong approach until my last interview, and DJ Cooch said, "Oh, people are going to want to hear these jokes for 2 years." I was like, "Oh, I was gonna ignore it because I thought it would be, people would be sick of it already." It's just like,
Well,
no.
the important thing is to write it in your frame of reference. Don't write it what you think everyone wants to hear, or don't write it like everyone the same types of jokes. Write it in your own experience of the quarantine. For me, it's usually what bothers me the most that's going on, and I write material about that. And a lot of times, it takes the power out of it. Like, a year ago when I got a CPAP machine, so many people are like, they don't want people to know they have a CPAP. Like, what? Why is that a problem? Why? So I took a picture of me wearing my mask and posted it on Facebook, and I said that is my dating profile. So the things that make you uncomfortable is the best material to do. So it's always best to write it in your frame of reference, write it how you experience the quarantine. And that way it's personalized instead of just hacky jokes, right?
Nice.
Make it about your experience, your feelings.
I'm encouraged between you and DJ. I got some great tips here on comedy writing today for free. Here I am trying to get you exposure, and I'm getting it.
I thought this was all about me, but it's not.
Evidently not. I think I'm becoming a narcissist. Thank you, Bill Word.
Well, that's part of the requirements to being a stand-up, right?
Yeah.
Is you want the attention. Like I took improv classes and I was in improv troupe, and I realized at some point I want to be the center of attention. Why would I want to be with an ensemble group? I want to be the only one that people are noticing, right? So I'm an attention whore, which I think probably every stand-up can relate to that.
Totally. I'm a middle child, and like all of the pressure was on me to be funny. Once they knew I was funny, it was like Pagliacci's at the dinner table again. And like I didn't feel like laughing or making them laugh, but it was my role in the family.
Yes, and you needed to do it.
Yes, I was a good girl.
Yes, you need to do what you were told, and your job was to be funny. So.
And then at school, the roles changed, and then you go to the principal, and then your parents are mad at you. Now you got to tell really good jokes to get them out of that one. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yes.
Back to you.
I always said I got in trouble not from what I did, but what I said. That's what I got in trouble from. Yeah.
Yes. So when you were in school, did you go to the principal for being funny? Because I don't think the young people get it. Because comedy hasn't always been something that the world thought was important or smart.
Well, I was pretty much a good boy. I would always stop before I got in trouble. Like I always, I remember one time I was making an appointment to see a counselor when I was in high school, and surprisingly, people messed up my last name. It's really simple, W-O-R-D, Word, right? And so people are always, messing that up. And so the counselor asked me, how to spell my last name, and I spelled it, And then I said, I'm Bill, Bill. She goes, I know how to spell Bill. I'm a smart ass. So that's.
What's the funniest thing that you can remember that popped out of your mouth at the youngest age that you weren't even planning on saying?
Well, my mother would tell me things. I'll be clear here. There was 4 of us siblings, and I was mom's favorite. So obviously you can tell why. That's very obvious. But mom had stories, and I don't actually have, my memories are only mom telling these stories. So I'm assuming these are actually happened. But I'm not sure how old I was, probably under 2 years old. I was eating soup, and I guess the soup was really hot. And I said, I'm a hot baby.
You're a hot what?
I'm a hot baby.
Oh my gosh.
That was one of the stories mom would always tell, because she always had these cute stories that, her son Bill, and obviously the few times I brought women over, mom would have to tell those stories.
Aww.
And show photos of me on the toilet.
How endearing. So, what have you learned through the whole shutdown that's going to make you alter your comedy training or the way you do comedy writing or what you're going to do after? Is there anything that this has transformed in your life for the better that you think right now?
I will never go in my bedroom again. That's the thing. I would. What have I learned? I miss my freedom. I don't know. I've never been in jail or prison, so I'm assuming this is a little nicer than that, slightly better. What have I learned? I miss going to places. I miss my freedom.
Yes.
I know I have a roommate that seems to burn stuff in the oven. Forgets it's in there. So I've told people it's not the virus that's going to kill me. It's my roommate's cooking. So, so I think for me is be grateful for what I have. Don't take things for granted. Don't take people for granted. I think a lot of times, I've grown up in beautiful Southern California. Like I had a friend that lived in Michigan, and I talked to her all the time, and just the miserable weather there. So, I'm grateful that I live in Laguna Hills here. It's really beautiful, the trees, and it's really nice weather here. I live in America, I don't want to sound too patriotic, but this is a great place to live, and we have a lot of freedoms. And so I think for me, it's just, I try to have gratitude. I think if anything I've learned in life, during my darkest times in my life, I'd always try to come up with a gratitude list.
Really?
Maybe it was just, I liked the shirt I was wearing that day or something, and I think that's important, is to stay in gratitude. One of the things that bothers me a lot of times is, people are in fear. And yes, there's a lot to be scared of. I mean, don't get me wrong, dying a painful death alone, other than that, there's really nothing to be afraid of. But like someone posted on Facebook, I'm surrounded by the coronavirus. Now, it was text, so I'm putting my own emotional interpretation of it, but I'm surrounded by the coronavirus. and I commented, you're surrounded by love.
Oh.
So it's all about attitude. How, you could be in the crappiest situation, but it's all about attitude. And I don't always have a good attitude. It sounds easy for me to say it right now, but I try to go back to that. What am I grateful for?
Yes.
My father, what was it like during World War II? They didn't know if we were going to be invaded by the Japanese or the Germans, right? That must have been, like, we know already, like we've all watched the History Channel, so we know how World War II ends. But what was it like to go through that? Or you don't know Like my father was in the Navy in World War II. He didn't know if his ship was going to be sunk.
Yeah.
Right. That seems to me more stressful than what we're going through now. What? It's so horrible. I could only watch Netflix all day. I'm stuck watching Disney Plus. My life is so horrible, right? So it's all perspective too. You know what? Now, obviously, if you had the virus and you can't breathe, that's a horrible thing.
Yeah. Then you're surrounded by it.
Surrounded. Like I said, I'm putting my own interpretation here. Surrounded. It's all around you.
There's no room for love.
Just it's looking for you. Yes. So I just, attitude is so important, you know.
I've noticed if you're in the middle of fear, there's no room for love. And if you're in the middle of love, there's no room for fear.
Exactly.
So that's beautiful.
Exactly. And that's why I posted, you're surrounded by love, right? It's all about where your head is.
Yes.
I mean, obviously there's tons of stories, you know, not a lot, but there are, you know, people that survived like the Holocaust, and there's a lot of what their attitude was that got them to survive, or people in concentration camps and prisoner of war, you know, how they survived in the worst of situations. And, you know, nothing's set in stone. So attitude is so important in this situation. And
my dad survived 7 concentration camps. I don't know if he's like a cat or what, but
yeah.
So when you told me that your roommate is burning things in the oven, where my mind went.
Too soon? Sorry.
It triggered me, I gotta say.
I'm sorry.
Gotta be careful with us Jews.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, back to you. Yeah. So, do you think that when you go back to teaching after we get out of our rooms, do you think that you're going to be a more loving, patient, kind, or you've always been that way, and this whole shutdown isn't going to affect your teaching, but like, in what way do you think it'll affect what you do as a comic?
I think part of what you said is true. You know, I think overall, I'm certainly much more patient as a teacher than I was when I started. And I'm really, you know, I as I said earlier in this, how I'm honest, but I've learned to try to do it in a loving way, the best I can. Sometimes I have to just, you know, this is what's going on. A lot of times teaching classes is like herding cats. You know, everyone is trying to get attention, and, you know, I'm working with one person and 5 people over here are trying to get attention. And so it's always the best analogy is like teaching is like herding cats. So I try to, yeah, maybe I have to be firm, but I don't have to be nasty and mean about it. I think a lot of times, maybe it's a character defect, what it is. I kind of learned it some from the men in my family, you know, I have a sharp wit, and sometimes it could be pretty nasty, and, you know, there's sometimes you can say things and there's no coming back from it.
Have you ever done a celebrity? Have you ever done a roast?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you have?
Yeah. I've had people, yeah, I've been roasted. I mean, I've had roasts, and, you know, it's like you want me to roast you, and then you get upset from what I say.
Exactly.
So, you know, and so I try not to take, when I'm getting roasted, but, you know, I had a roast on my birthday. So I'm lucky. My birthday was in February before birthday party stopped.
We're not getting older. Yay.
But one of the things I realized, I go, yeah, I guess I do post too much on Facebook. Like, you know, if you know, I had surgeries, what was it, like 4 years ago? Can't even remember the time. And like, yeah, we know, Bill, because you posted every 5 days that you had these surgeries. Like, okay, well, maybe I should not post that stuff as much. So, and it's kind of ways, and it was good for me to hear, like, okay, maybe I try to get attention too much, so maybe I need to back off a little bit from that. I think overall it's just kind of what I said before, be grateful, to enjoy. You know, it's going to be so much nicer to be able to go outside and be able to be with crowds again, be with people again. I think that's, like, I miss human touch. I miss being around people.
Yeah.
As I always say, I was very familiar with social distancing before, because that's pretty much every relationship I've been in. They're always 6 feet away. And what's changed since this? Nothing really. Here I am alone in my bedroom. Nothing's changed.
You live in a beautiful senior community, and I won't say where, but in what way do you find that the seniors there act differently than you would find anywhere else where it's not just seniors during this shutdown?
Well, actually, the truth is, about 6 months ago, I moved out of that community. But I live about a block away from there.
Oh, God.
I'm out of there. So what was the question again?
Like, do you think that the seniors in that senior community are behaving? Like, could you observe, if you went through there, them doing things quite drastically different than the normal population outside of a senior community?
It depends.
That's not a pun.
Yes. Yeah. It depends. There we go. See, I didn't even know I was doing it. I didn't even know I was going there. I did a pun without even knowing it. A lot of strong-willed people, right? I'm used to doing it in a certain way, and I think the toughest part about this is, like, we can't, like an earthquake, you feel it, right? If there was a tsunami, you would see it. You see the results. A tornado, like, there's a virus out there. Is there? I had a hard time because I don't like to be stuck at home. But when I started watching the news and seeing how, serious this is, but that's the toughest part, I think, for most of us. It's like, really, like, it doesn't seem any different. Like, why do I need to not go to the beach? Why do I not need to go to comedy clubs or go to church or whatever, right? It's kind of hard because you can't. I guess if you could see the virus, floating in the sky, like, oh, there it is, run. That's what we should have. Instead of finding a cure for the virus, they should have some kind of dye or something you could put on it, and we could see it coming.
They're the beautiful idea.
The virus is coming. Run. It'd be like a Godzilla movie, right? Where we're running from the virus. That's what we need. A dye for the virus right there.
That's beautiful. When you said that, they can't see the virus, my mind went to, they're probably not, some of them, this is dark. Okay, I'm going to go dark for a sec. Well, their relatives, they don't see their relatives much either for the most part. So they're probably going, oh, it's just like that crazy daughter of mine, a crazy granddaughter that never comes by, she'll come eventually or whatever. They're probably like, they're thinking about something they can't see. They probably equate to a relative that never visits them.
Yes.
That's all.
I have a friend whose mother's in her 80s, and he has the hardest time keeping her at home, because she may watch a particular news channel that tells you stuff that it's not necessarily true. So
yes, here's to that.
Yeah, and so he's having a hard time. Like, Mom, this could kill you, but she's like, this is some conspiracy or something. And so
yes,
it was never political for me, but it was more about, I just don't like to give up my freedom. And I think, it wasn't until I started, seeing, obviously there's some horrible stuff, and I have to limit myself on how much I watch it on TV because it is pretty horrible. That I really kind of like, oh, well, yeah, I had pneumonia about a year ago. I think you had pneumonia recently, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah. And it was really horrible. It was terrible. And I just had it in one lung. One lung. Okay. Correct English. We could fix that in post.
Yeah, I'll go change that in my spare time.
So I just had pneumonia in one lung, and they were talking. I was watching today. They had an emergency room physician saying, the problem is it goes into both lungs. So I know how painful that was. And I jokingly said at the time, I didn't realize breathing was that important, but it really is. So I know how horrible that was, and I just had it in one lung. So that kind of woke me up. Like, yeah, I mean, to me, it's not just death. It's I'm being dark here now. It's a horrible death, and you die alone. You don't have your family there. So that kind of sobered me up a little bit.
Yes.
But I think sometimes it's hard to communicate that with, people much older than us.
Yes.
And my mother died 6 years ago. My father died 30 years ago. So I'm not really dealing with elderly parents. So I could only guess how that would have affected them. But, they're not around right now.
Yes.
So.
Wow. Well, your mother died just pretty recent, actually, in the scheme of things. So I'm sorry to hear that. Your father died at kind of a relatively young age for you and him, right?
Yeah, my father died. My father died at 62.
Wow.
Both my parents died of cancer. My mother was breast cancer. My father was bladder cancer. And I was 29 when my father passed away. And so my brother probably never watched this, so I could just talk about him. My brother is 4 years older than me, and when he turned 62, he was so freaked out that he was going to die. And I was trying to tell him, it's just a number. There's no magic, you're going to die the same year as your father did. There's really no rhyme or reason to that.
No.
But he's so superstitious and, crazy. Sorry.
Yeah.
Love my brother, but he's crazy.
No, I get it.
But I just try to and he's 66 now. And so, hey, he didn't die at 62. Who was right?
So, the weird thing is that when you mentioned your brother and that, is that David Letterman had that same problem because his father died of a heart attack early in life, a massive. And so he was always like, screw it. You only live once, because he didn't think he was going to live past 30-ish.
Right. So, yeah, that probably helped him to have success, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at you, a philosopher. This has been awesome. You've gone like a half hour with me and then some. 36 minutes, Bill. You didn't even need a blue pill.
Everybody dance now.
This has been fun. I've enjoyed getting to know you, and I'm so happy to have my people get to know you. So financially, are you accepting Cash App, PayPal, any donations? Or are you sitting good with money?
I'm never going to turn down money.
What's your handle where they can send you money if they're so inclined?
Well, Venmo, I'm OC Stand Up.
OC,
real simple.
Like for Orange County, Stand Up.
OC, and all one word, OC Stand Up is my Venmo.
Okay.
PayPal, you can do, what is it? Bill Word it's either Bill Word at killercomedy.com, and that's comedy with a K. Yeah, I believe that's because I like 700 email addresses.
Me too.
Yeah, so, or you can always come on Facebook and ask me, and I'll give it. But I just recently joined Venmo because I had a friend saying, it's time to get with the kids. That's what all the kids are using. Venmo.
I know. These kids are going to kill me. Every day there's something new I'm supposed to do. I'm old. I don't want to answer to anybody.
Well, you're on Zoom, so you did something.
I did Zoom. I saw the benefit.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't know what Zoom was before this either. So
Never.
like old dog, new tricks, right?
Yes. And so if people want to follow you, you're on Facebook as Bill Word. Where else can they follow you besides down the street?
Well, my website is ocstandup.com. Yes, ocstandup.com.
Nice.
All one word.
I bet you have a lot of
And,
people wanting
yeah,
that stand up. Do a lot of people want
What's
that website?
Yeah. Yeah. So that you can find me on that, and it's easy to, Bill Word on Facebook. You do Bill Word at Instagram. I think it's Bill Word 1613. Bill Word 1613 on Instagram. Those numbers mean nothing. I'm not smart enough. Instagram gave me those numbers. I didn't realize at the time I could change it to some numbers that makes sense. So I just accepted what Instagram told me was going to be my name, not knowing that. So 1613 means nothing. It's probably the year I graduated from high school, 1613. So
when you came in off the Mayflower.
yes, exactly.
Jeez, you're a lot of fun. Thank you so much for all your time. Bill Word, folks.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Bill. Bye.
Love ya.
Love ya. Bye. That was awesome, Bill.